mathematically, if I am at my house and I'm trying to walk to my friend's house, there is a shortest path to getting to his house. And I basically set that criteria out. And sure enough, a single strategy emerged. It's the same strategy that I'm using 6,500 homes later, $2 billion in real estate. And it's this.
Okay, everybody, welcome to Kryptonized. My special guest here, big guy on Instagram. If you haven't seen him, look in the show notes. Get a load of what he's doing on Instagram. Not sure how you do it, Kris, but you're amazing. He's a renowned business coach, best-selling author. He's got a new book out. We'll talk about that. World-class speaker, life-changing breakthrough mentor. He's got a big passion for helping others. We always love those types of people. And today we're going to be talking more about the real estate of helping people, but we'll touch in a little bit about his book and how you go about using it to make a transformation in your life. And I really like the 5 lenses that he looks through. He's asking you guys to look through in order to become better. So that's it. For a quick intro of Kris, you're going to know a little bit more about him by the end of this interview. So Kris, welcome to the show.
Mark, appreciate it. Glad to be here.
All right. So, this is more of a real estate and tokenization show. Tell us about your real estate philosophy. We'll get into the book and your overall philosophy, which is important. But tell us about your real estate philosophy, how you've started investing in real estate and some of your tips and tricks.
Real estate was super intimidating when I was in college and basically looking at building a portfolio. It was this language I didn't know. They had words like mortgage and rent and amortization schedule, and everything felt intimidating because I just didn't understand what it all meant. But I had met this man who had made over $10 million in real estate. He was in his late 30s, and I was enamored with the idea of picking that as a career because all of the majors that I was looking at in college paid $50,000 to $100,000 a year. I tried being a doctor, honestly failed out of the pre-med classes, and I needed to find a different path for myself. And so real estate quickly really caught my eye because of this person that I met. And yet that mentor would tell me that one moment he was working on a flip, and then it was a wholesale deal, and then it was an apartment complex, and then it was a rental. And I was like, dude, how many strategies are there out there? And he said, well, there's about 30 major strategies. And I said, okay, well, I don't want to waste time on learning them all. Like, this is hard, scary stuff. Just teach me the best one. And I remember that he looked at me and he said, well, Kris, that's not possible. There is no such thing as a best one. I said, no, I refuse that. And he said, well, how can you refuse it? I said, because mathematically, if I am at my house and I'm trying to walk to my friend's house, there is a shortest path to getting to his house. Right? There's a long path, there's circuitous paths, but there's a short path. And he says, well, for you to create a philosophy around that, you'd have to figure out what you value because some strategies make a lot of money, but they have more risk. So there's trade-offs. And that's when I really sat myself down and said, okay, I want to imagine that for me, the best strategy is the one that takes the least time, the least effort, the least risk, makes the most money. It's got to work in up and down markets, and it's got to provide value to the person in the home. And I basically set that criteria out, and sure enough, a single strategy emerged. It's the same strategy that I'm using 6,500 homes later, $2 billion in real estate. And it's this. I buy single family homes under the median in the top 5 markets with a minimum 25% ROI on a midterm 5 to 7 year hold, period. And what that means is if I buy real estate and I'm averaging about 34% on my money, which means my money doubles every other year with compound, right? So I'm compounding, I'm doubling my money every other year. That means that I buy a house today and in a few years I can trade it for 3, and then a few years later I can trade it for 7. And basically I multiply my portfolio, and over 20 years I can take 50 G's on a single house and I can turn that into $4.3 million, kicking the trash out of society's 401ks, IRAs, and creating a really great alternative to building a legacy.
That's amazing. And a lot of people watching this are wealthy individuals, but there's some that are wanting to get started. So where do they get that initial down payment? I mean, you've heard from, sure, like I have, from Gen Z and parts of the most of the millennials and even some of Gen X. Well, where do I get the down payment to do everything that you're talking about, Kris?
Yeah, so I've got $50,000 right here, right? Like, this is what I need as an investor minimally to get in on a property. But I didn't have $50,000 to get started in the game. So I did something called house hacking. So what I did is I took a year, I saved up $5,000, and I used that as a 3% down payment on a real small little property. I got it super undervalued, and then it also had a basement to boot that I could rent out. So when my wife and I went from renting to buying our first little bungalow, we rented the basement and covered our whole mortgage. So we started living for free. And we also walked into 40,000 of equity on this small little deal. And then a year later, we pulled the equity out of that house to buy our second house. So I didn't need more money. And then my second house bought my third house. And then I learned that if you can get high enough ROIs, that there's people out there that are unsatisfied with their retirement plans and their savings and the returns they're getting, that they'll partner up and do deals. So, technically I've partnered up with hundreds and hundreds of people all over the world, and I basically help place their money in real estate, and then we build these massive portfolios.
Is that a fund that you've got, or is it just money you take on one-off basis?
No, I think it's even just one-offs. It's someone saying, okay, the last 20 years, the studies just came out, 401ks are producing 4.2%. And that's not keeping up with what inflation has been, because over the last 100 years, it's averaging 3.1%. But based on special Biden economics, it's definitely a lot worse than that. So, you look at the money you're earning in a 401k, or you blend in your IRA, and even if you're, pulling off barely 6%, your money triples over 20 years. This is why people get to 65. And when they look at retirement, they say, I worked 40 years, and based on my current spending, I only saved 3 years of living. And so people, they need an alternative. And I think that real estate is safer than 401ks and IRAs. It doesn't move so volatilely, but it also just makes a whole lot more money. It makes 27 times more money than a 401k. And so I've been helping people get in this game for the last 20 years. My father-in-law was my first partner. When I bought my first 3 homes, I remember he thought I was kind of crazy, Mark. Bought my first home, and he's like, you're a college kid with an undeclared major. That doesn't make any sense. I bought my second house. He's like, are you guys getting divorced? I bought my third house, and he wrote me off as a little, wild child. But that third home actually ended up changing his opinion, like it does for most people, right? I mean, people are like crabs in a bucket. When someone does something different, we think they're going to fail. They do it a second time, it's a fluke. But if they do it third time, we get FOMO. And my father-in-law got FOMO, and that's when he said, well, what if I put up money from my retirement account and we split the profits equally? And that worked out so well. We ended up doing 50 properties together. And he was just the first of so many people that have come after, saying, geez, we're all looking for a better alternative. So it's kind of what it's turned into. Is it looks like real estate, it smells like real estate, but in the end, it's just for most people an alternative with higher ROI.
Oh, definitely. And I've kind of experienced the same route. I'm not where you are as far as you continued down that path. I was in technology doing real estate on the side, but in retrospect, I should have just gone real estate. So, Kris, let's move to something that I don't know if you're aware of it or what your opinion is, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the tokenization of real estate. Do you see anything there for you personally? And then what's your overall, kind of perspective on it? Is this a good move, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've cooled off a little bit on the crypto space. Really just kind of waiting to see what it's going to do. Definitely a long player, but there's so many weird short games out there. There's so many pyramid schemes in it. And so tokenization is actually really fascinating, because I have been a part of a few companies where it's been exciting and I've seen it work, but it hasn't appeared to be like the most sustainable model in a lot of situations. And so real estate is fairly stable. You think that the tokenization of real estate is probably going to be a good thing. And I think it's inevitable. Like, it's going to happen. There's a number of companies that are making their move on it. But I haven't really found a benefit of like getting in on that game just yet, because I'm watching, I'm learning, and I do have a philosophy on how I invest my money. Real estate is where I go for good double-digit returns. I go to business, for triple-digit returns. I buy companies for quadruple-digit returns. And then you've got things like just crypto in general, that if you're smart and intelligent, you know what you're doing, there can be asymmetric upside bigger than anything else, but also lower than everything else too. So it's a fascinating game. And, I don't know if I understand it well enough to really see where the stable strategies are, because a lot of things that were working a year ago aren't working today. Things that were working 3 years ago aren't. And so much of my strategy is built on dependability. It's like my strategy in real estate, for example, which is the most conservative thing that I do, but it sustainably produces these 25 to 40% annual ROIs year over year over year over year. Doesn't matter if there's a 2008, doesn't matter if there's a pandemic. Those things end up actually being good for real estate. So when the markets really fall, real estate typically does better. And so there's a part of me that's like, well, I'm a long player and I like the stabilization and I like the homogeneous predictability.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I mean, with tokenization of real estate, it's mainly for people that can't get in because they don't have the money to get in, and they can invest in somebody like you that might have a tokenized fund, for example. I'm just throwing this out there. Also international. You can invest in Dubai, which is like going gangbusters right now. You can't do that any other way unless you go there, get a license, or work with somebody that's licensed to buy real estate over there. And even then, you know, how are you going to manage it? So that's what tokenization does for the investor. It opens up the world.
Yeah.
But anybody watching this program knows exactly what I'm talking about. Let's move, Kris, to your book to wrap things up. Why did you write Time Machine? And tell us a little bit about it.
You know, last year I came out with a book called Have It All. And it's all my financial philosophy and my guide. And it basically says anyone can be wealthy in 5 years. Most people would say that's too good to be true, but that's because they're stuck in a single digit ROI mindset. When I wrote the book Time Machine, it was really designed to be a companion on the decision-making process of how do you evaluate decisions in life. And, you know, a lot of people, they'll make a decision based on money, based on time, or logic. These are three very rational lenses, and they're problematic because if everything is based on logic, we have to understand that our mind doesn't actually want us to be happy, Mark. Like the purpose of the mind is not happiness. That's the purpose of the heart. And so when we consult with the mind, we're trying to always be logical and we're in our head. And if you hang out with Tony Robbins a little bit, he has this funny quote. He says, in your head, you're dead. And it's this idea that, your mind isn't going to bring you fulfillment, happiness, joy. It's going to bring you, reasonability and logic and rationale. But similarly, just as rational are evaluating time and money. And if every decision that we make is based on time and money, we miss out on some of the best opportunities in life. For example, where does joy, happiness, positivity, where does it actually fit in that rationale? Well, the truth is that it doesn't, which is why 85% of people hate what they do for a living, because they're just trading that job time for money. And they haven't really paused to really evaluate, like, what about making a choice based on pleasure, enjoyment, liking who I am? Or where does spirituality, play a part in our daily lives as far as intuition goes? Where does energy, I'm a high energy human being, and I get used all the time. People are like, dude, it's got to be caffeine, Adderall, like Crohn's on something. I'm like, dude, I'm all natural. I'm all natural. This energy that I have, it just comes from having an energetic lens of when I make a choice, is it going to give me energy or is it going to drain and bankrupt my energy account? And so the book basically says, hey, if you want to take a more well-rounded approach to life where you can minimize your regret, you can't just evaluate time and money alone. You can't just look at logic. You've got to go broader than that and actually ask a more well-rounded perspective. And so the book gives 5 different lenses on making decisions. It comes with this simplified worksheet at the end that says, hey, when you're making important choices, consider all of these things, because often when you do, you're going to go back and renege on a lot of old choices that you've made because it's maybe not producing your highest and best life. Maybe the best financial choices or maybe time reclamation, or maybe rationality. But in the end, those are not always the most important things. In fact, there ain't no U-Haul going to heaven. There's a lot of things in the end, in the winter of our lives, that we won't care about that we thought were important in the spring of our lives. And so this book, Time Machine, is really, it's available on Amazon. It just came out, achieved bestseller on Amazon, and it's designed to give perspective on how to make superior choices in life.
And people can get a free gift if they go to freewealthgift.com. Is that correct, Kris?
Yeah, I've got my books, tickets to my events. I've got free consultations for helping people understand, what they could be doing in real estate. So freewealthgift.com is where I basically take a lot of my freemium, make it available, and say, hey, if there's anything, that you've enjoyed from this podcast, grab my books for free, or come get some more knowledge and information, and let's connect.
Yeah, I mean, my God, you're doing amazing things. Love what you're doing. Really impressed that you went from making money in real estate and buying businesses to, more of this global perspective on your life and everyone else's life by writing Time Machine. So Well done, Kris. Can't wait to see what you're going to do in the next 10 years.
Mark, I really appreciate it. Was glad to be here today.
Thank you. Hey, folks. My name is Mark Fidelman. I am the host of Kryptonized, and I have a special tip for you today. It's Tetragard. You can find it at tetragard.io. This is the first decentralized ETF which consists of Bitcoin, PaxG, and Ethereum. I recommend this. If you just want to get into crypto the easy way and have some solid crypto tokens that are in this particular ETF, then Tetragard is the way to go. Check it out.